Things are already boiling over in Pittsburgh, and the situation involving Aaron Rodgers has reportedly taken a shocking turn. Inside the Steelers' locker room, according to rising tension within the team, Rodgers is now facing serious pushback from his own teammates, with frustration spilling over after recent setbacks and injuries. So in this video, we break down what led to this internal conflict, how bad things have really gotten behind the scenes, and why the Steelers' locker room might already be on the verge of collapse. On Saturday, May 16, 2026, the news finally broke. Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers reached agreement on a one-year deal, worth up to $25 million. After spending more than 4 months contemplating his future, Rodgers, who will turn 43 in December, decided to return for a 22nd NFL season and remain Pittsburgh's starting quarterback. The deal includes $22 million guaranteed and is worth up to $25 million. That should have been the end of the story. Veteran quarterback makes up his mind, signs the contract, everybody moves on. But in Pittsburgh, it was the exact opposite. The reaction was split. Pittsburgh Steelers fans shared something of a mixed reaction to the news of Aaron Rodgers' reported return, but mostly everyone said they expected this outcome, and the fans were not the only ones with complicated feelings about Rodgers being back. The frustration had been building for months, and it had been building from inside the building itself. The Steelers have displayed saint-like patience waiting for Aaron Rodgers to say he is coming back for the 2026 season, even though a large portion of their fan base doesn't agree with their approach, according to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Jerry Dulac. But that patience could be starting to wear thin. Now look, this is not some outside noise from talking heads who have never been inside the facility. There are other people, certainly in the organization, in the locker room, who are just going, "What are we doing? We're back for off-season workouts in like 10 days. That came from NFL insider Tom Pelissero on The Rich Eisen Show, relaying what he was hearing from people plugged in. Players were showing up, coaches were installing new schemes, and the man who was supposed to be leading the offense was somewhere else entirely, doing who knows what, relaying what he was hearing from people plugged in. Players were showing up, coaches were installing new schemes, and the man who was supposed to be leading the offense was somewhere else entirely, doing who knows what, making everybody wait. This is a franchise that has not won a playoff game since 2016. TJ Watt has yet to experience postseason success, despite his individual greatness, and players like Cam Hayward are in the later stages of their careers, where urgency matters most. These are players who do not have time to sit around, while a 42-year-old quarterback figures out whether he feels like playing football. And it went deeper than just waiting. Former Steelers offensive lineman Trey Essex suggested the situation could create real tension in the locker room if it drags on. According to Essex, the uncertainty around Rodgers' future has the potential to become a crisis if players are left without clarity heading into the new season. A crisis. That is the word being used to describe a situation created by one man's decision to hold an entire franchise hostage while he weighed his options on his own timeline. And within that locker room, the patience had fully run out. So how did it get here? How did Aaron Rodgers, a 4-time MVP, a Super Bowl champion, a future Hall of Famer, end up being the target of frustration from the very teammates he was supposed to be leading? The answer starts with what happened in the 2025 season and how it ended. To understand the depth of the backlash inside the Steelers' locker room, you have to understand what the 2025 season actually looked like. On September 7, 2025, Rodgers made his Steelers debut against his former team, the New York Jets. During his first outing with Pittsburgh, he completed 22 of 30 pass attempts for 244 yards and 4 touchdowns, while committing no turnovers. The game ended with a 34-32 Steelers victory. It was as strong a start as anyone could have hoped for. The narrative around Rodgers in Pittsburgh changed overnight. The skeptics quieted down. The locker room bought in. He finished the year throwing for over 3,300 yards, with 24 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, leading the Steelers to their first division crown since 2020. Rodgers ended the regular season by throwing the game-winning touchdown pass to Calvin Austin III against the Ravens that ultimately sealed a division title and playoff spot for Pittsburgh. His steady, calm leadership proved an intangible benefit, and he didn't make waves in the media the way many feared before 2025 began. There have been many reports about how players loved having Rodgers in the locker room and how he was a big positive to the overall team. Teammates were genuinely effusive about what it was like having Rodgers around day in and day out. Mason Rudolph made an appearance on the Just in Time podcast and discussed his experience working with Rodgers. He would pop quiz the room, said Rudolph on Rodgers during film sessions, Rodgers would call out receivers by name during film sessions. Roman Wilson, DK Metcalf, Scotty Miller, Calvin Austin, quizzing them on the tendencies of opposing cornerbacks and defensive coverages. The film sessions, both inside and outside the building, are obviously a huge part of how a quarterback is able to process information so quickly during such a fast-paced game. Getting the rest of your team to process the game at that speed, as well as setting new standards for them to continue that mindset moving forward, is a huge advantage of bringing in someone like Rodgers. The standard he set was clear: work harder, watch more film, know the opponent inside and out before you step on the field. It was the kind of leadership that championship teams are built on, and it elevated the entire roster. But then the playoffs arrived, and everything the Steelers had built over 17 weeks came crashing down in a single afternoon. In the Steelers' playoff loss to the Houston Texans, Rodgers played poorly, completing 17 passes out of 33 attempts for 146 yards, getting sacked 4 times for 36 yards, and throwing a pick six. Rodgers also fumbled on one of the sacks, which was returned for a Texans touchdown. The final score was 30-6. The Steelers had just 175 yards of offense against the Texans. It was a catastrophic ending. Rodgers' final pass of the season, but not his career, was a pick six. The image lingered. A 4-time MVP, throwing a pick six to end his season. Pittsburgh hadn't won a playoff game since 2016, and this loss extended that drought in the most brutal fashion imaginable. And then, less than 24 hours after that humiliation, Mike Tomlin stepped down one day after Pittsburgh's season-ending loss to the Texans in the AFC wildcard round. The coach who had led the franchise for 18 years, who had never posted a losing season, walked away from the building. When Tomlin stepped down less than 24 hours after Pittsburgh's wildcard loss to the Houston Texans, it seemed certain Rodgers would exit alongside him. But Rodgers did not exit. He also did not commit. He disappeared into the offseason, leaving Pittsburgh to wonder whether they had a quarterback or not. And that is where the frustration really ignited. The Steelers moved fast after Tomlin's departure. They hired Mike McCarthy, the man who had coached Rodgers for 13 seasons in Green Bay, the man who had won a Super Bowl with him in 2010. Tabbing McCarthy as the team's next head coach opened the door for a Rodgers return, though owner Art Rooney too made clear that wasn't the reason behind McCarthy's selection. The expectation was straightforward. McCarthy's presence would fast-track Rodgers' decision. The familiarity between the two was well documented. Rodgers told ESPN that McCarthy was one of the great guys in the league, and that deep down, there's so much love and appreciation for the time we spent together. But weeks turned into months. The NFL Combine came and went. At the 2026 NFL Combine in Indianapolis, Steelers general manager Omar Khan told reporters he and newly hired head coach Mike McCarthy had good and honest communication with Rodgers. Khan assured the media, "All I'll tell you guys is that I don't foresee this going like it did last year. It went exactly like last year. The NFL draft came and went. Free agency came and went. The deadlines were public messages to Rodgers, as one was supposed to be roughly a month after the season ended, another around free agency, and then a third prior to the NFL draft. It is early May, and there has been no contract signed." Inside the building, things were shifting, from cautious optimism to something far more volatile. While the front office waited, the players were growing restless. Some people question how Rodgers is as a teammate, pointing to times on the field when he's yelling at teammates for making mistakes. These conversations, which had once been dismissed as outside noise, started carrying more weight within the locker room. Trey Essex said on 93.7 The Fan, "I think maybe initially, it could be an issue for the veterans. That's why I think this decision needs to be made early enough, so it can help and grow with these guys early in the offseason. Let them know you're going to be their #1 quarterback, so that the guys can get behind them. And let it be known that this is what is going to happen this season versus letting this thing hang and linger with Aaron Rodgers. For the veterans, knowing what is ahead of you gives you a little more comfort than this waiting game that the Steelers have been playing for the last few years." This was not ambiguous commentary. This was a former Steeler, someone who understood the inner workings of that locker room, flat out saying that veterans were being hurt by one player's refusal to make a timely decision. The language was pointed: crisis and tension and frustration, words that do not normally surface in Pittsburgh's culture of stoic silence and controlled messaging. Then came the strangest episode of all. An initial report stated that Rodgers was visiting Pittsburgh, and it seemed like the veteran QB re-signing with the Steelers was imminent. However, more information surfaced that contradicted that. And now, while Rodgers was reportedly in Pittsburgh, he didn't visit the Steelers. He was in the city eating ice cream with teammates, but never bothered to stop by the facility. It came out the Steelers didn't know he was even coming. Mike Florio said on his Pro Football Talk podcast, "I talked to somebody who's plugged in, and internally, the Steelers' reaction was, it's just Aaron being Aaron. Aaron being Aaron." 3 words that capture the entire saga. A 42-year-old quarterback dictating the calendar of a historic NFL franchise, and the organization simply shrugging because they had no other choice. The entire roster, the coaching staff, the front office, everyone frozen in place by one man's indecision. One player's indecision isn't just holding up the roster, it's holding up the financial architecture of the next 2 seasons. Every free agent signing got delayed. Every depth move got complicated. The Steelers were building a house without knowing whether they had a foundation. This is where the gloves came off. While much of the frustration had been communicated through intermediaries and former players, the dam finally broke when current members of the organization started making their feelings known. Cam Hayward, the longtime defensive leader of the Steelers, said, "Hey, you want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler or you don't?" That single sentence carried the weight of a decade of frustration. Hayward, a man who has spent his entire career in Pittsburgh, who has watched the franchise go through quarterback after quarterback, in the post-Roethlisberger era, drew a line in the sand. You are either here or you are not. There is no middle ground, and Hayward was not alone. That opinion, from everything insiders have been told, is not solely Cam Hayward's. There are other people, certainly in the organization, in the locker room, who are just going, "What are we doing?" The frustration had become collective, a shared sentiment reverberating through the hallways of the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. This was not the typical grumbling that surfaces during any NFL offseason. This was a coordinated public pushback against the franchise's most accomplished player. Veterans who had earned the right to speak were speaking, and they were not whispering. Meanwhile, the media world piled on. Nick Wright of FS1's First Things First questioned the entire arrangement, asking who benefits from Rodgers taking his time. Like, that should have been the question. Have you talked to Will Howard? He's the starting quarterback of the Steelers. And so, I just don't get it. I don't know who benefits from it. And then there was the newly acquired Michael Pittman Jr., who had been traded to Pittsburgh from Indianapolis. When asked about his contact with Rodgers, Pittman was candid. "I'm trying to give him space because Aaron's a guy. He likes his space. He likes to get refreshed. I didn't want to just get signed and then blow him up and be like, 'Hey Aaron, what's the deal?' Just give him time." Think about that for a moment. A new receiver, brought in specifically to help this offense compete, was too hesitant to even text his own quarterback because of the delicate nature of the situation. That is not a functioning football operation. That is a hostage negotiation dressed up as a roster construction. The Steelers had drafted Drew Aller in the 3rd round of the 2026 NFL Draft out of Penn State. Aller is allegedly McCarthy's handpicked guy, and while he fell to the 3rd round, there is real buzz that if McCarthy, a known quarterback whisperer, can develop Aller, he has the NFL tools to become a star in this league. They already had Will Howard from the 2025 draft class. Will Howard not long ago earned a QB1 endorsement from McCarthy himself. 2 young quarterbacks, both eager, both hungry, both ready to take reps, and both stuck in limbo because the organization had hitched its wagon to a 42-year-old who could not bring himself to sign a piece of paper. If Rodgers hasn't given them a decision by the start of organized team activities. On May 18th, their latest deadline, their patience will start to turn into frustration, and maybe something more. Dulac wrote in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. That phrase, "and maybe something more," hung in the air like a threat. The implication was clear. If Rodgers did not commit, the Steelers might move on entirely. The situation was getting dicey. The Steelers may intentionally have given some information to Dulac so that Rodgers would get a hidden message about the current expectations. The franchise was using the media as a vehicle to pressure their own quarterback into making a decision. That is how far things had gone. A historic 6-time Super Bowl winning organization was resorting to public pressure campaigns against a player. They were simultaneously trying to retain. The disconnect between what was being said publicly and what was happening privately created a toxic atmosphere of confusion. telling everyone that Rodgers will decide by a date. And then seeing that date pass without a decision from the quarterback is a big source of the anger. Deadlines were set. Deadlines were missed. Promises were made. Promises were broken. And through it all, the locker room simmered. In the end, Aaron Rodgers did what Aaron Rodgers always does. He made his decision on his own timeline, and everyone else had to deal with it. On Friday night, Rodgers was spotted with teammates Mason Rudolph, Ben Skowronek, and Pat Freiermuth at Cool Cones in North Park, signaling that Rodgers was potentially gearing up to sign ahead of the start of OTAs. The next day, the deal was done. It's a one-year deal. Four-time NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers agreed to terms on a one-year deal. Now entering his 22nd NFL season, Rodgers reunites with Mike McCarthy for one more run in Pittsburgh. Rodgers will enter 2026 as Pittsburgh's unquestioned starter. The months of drama, the locker room tension, the public back and forth, all of it resolved with a signature just days before the Steelers' OTAs were scheduled to begin on May 18. Aaron Rodgers' official return, marked by the quarterback expected to sign. A one-year deal worth up to $25 million on Saturday answers one question for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It also creates several others. Who's the odd man out in a four-person QB room? Does there have to be one? Do the Steelers prioritize a veteran with higher floors or youngsters with higher, yet unknown ceilings? How will they juggle practice reps between a veteran relearning an offensive system and inexperienced signal callers who are still in development? Pittsburgh's quarterback room is now made up of Aaron Rodgers, Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and rookie Drew Allar. Four quarterbacks fighting for reps in an offense that is being installed from scratch under a new coaching staff. If the Steelers enter Week 1 of the 2026 season in a home game against the Atlanta Falcons with a quarterback room of Rodgers, Howard, and Allar, it would mark McCarthy's least experienced group of backups in his coaching career. But here's the part that makes the entire saga worthwhile, or at least worth examining. Reportedly, teammates passionately encouraged the organization to bring Rodgers back. Yes, the very same teammates who were frustrated, who were questioning the timeline, who were publicly expressing their impatience. They still wanted him. They wanted the certainty of knowing he would be there, even if the process of getting to that certainty drove them up a wall. The Steelers liked what they got out of Aaron Rodgers last season, believe he can do it again, and thought that running it back with him was their best course of action. The organization upgraded the roster around him. The Steelers replaced Kenneth Gainwell with Rico Dowdle, who just compiled his second straight 1,000-yard rushing season. The Steelers acquired former Colts receiver Michael Pittman and rookie second-round pick Jeremy Bernard, who was Alabama's leading receiver each of the past 2 seasons. Rodgers gains more to work with outside of star DK Metcalf. It feels like the Steelers purposely added both aforementioned new guys to prepare for Rodgers' return. And past reports painted a tense relationship between Rodgers and McCarthy, but those notions were either unfounded or the two mended fences over the years. Still, McCarthy immediately assembled a group of coaches familiar to Rodgers, most notably offensive line coach James Campen, who shares an especially close friendship with Rodgers. The truth, as it often does, lands somewhere in the middle of the extremes. The locker room frustration was real. Cam Hayward's words were real. The veterans' impatience was real. The missed deadlines, the internal tension, the media pressure campaigns, all of it happened. But so did the desire to have Rodgers back, because despite everything, Aaron Rodgers is by far the best option to be the starter in order to win games. Re-adding Rodgers shows Pittsburgh's desire to keep the top of the AFC North, all to itself. Plus, the ownership really brought in McCarthy to take over a win-now team. That attitude needs a more established signal caller to top off the roster. The attack from the locker room was never about wanting Rodgers gone. It was about wanting Rodgers committed. It was about wanting the man who holds the keys to the franchise's immediate future to show up, lean in, and say unequivocally, "I am here." The anger came from caring. The frustration came from urgency. TJ Watt does not have forever. Cam Hayward does not have forever. The window for this core of Steelers to make a legitimate run is narrow. And every day Rodgers spent contemplating his future was a day the window closed a little more. Rodgers and the Steelers will be searching for postseason wins that have eluded both for far too long. Pittsburgh hasn't won in the postseason since 2016. Rodgers hasn't since 2020. Together, they were bounced in last year's wild card game. against a stout Houston Texans defense that held the Steelers to just 6 points. Now Rodgers is signed, the locker room has its answer. OTAs begin on Monday, and no longer needing to learn a brand new offense, Rodgers will try to build on his 2025 season with Pittsburgh. Every McCarthy concept won't be foreign to Rodgers. He's the best option to absorb this offense and run it to its full potential, whether that is enough to get past the wild card round and deliver a playoff victory for the first time in a decade remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, the Steelers locker room got what it wanted. It got clarity, it got commitment, and it got its quarterback back, even if it had to drag him there kicking and screaming.